Oh, right. Yeah, my dad sent me this ages ago. I've been wanting to do this for ages. Um, because we did the Canadian Leo, that crazy guy. But this one is the scariest man in the Vietnam War, which I would say is Barnes. But let's see what they're saying. Let's go.
In the jungles of Vietnam, there was a name that struck fear into the hearts of the enemy. Master
Barnes.
Sergeant Jerry Mad Dog Shriver, a quiet, calculating force who led the most dangerous missions behind enemy lines, where few would dare to go. His enemies thought he was a ghost, vanishing into the shadows before they even knew he was there. But by 1969, Jerry's legend had reached its peak. Then on one final mission, he disappeared, never to be seen again. His full name was Jerry Michael Shriver, and he was born on September 24th, 1941, in a small town called Defuniak Springs, Florida. This was the kind of place where everyone knew each other and life moved slowly. His family wasn't rich, and he didn't grow up with much. But even as a kid, Jerry stood out. Not because he was loud, in fact, the opposite. He was quiet, polite, and kept to himself. He liked reading, he liked nature. He was strong and smart, but not the kind of kid who caused trouble. He had a calm, serious look in his eyes, even when he was young. His father was a World War II veteran, and Jerry seemed to carry that military spirit in him from early on. As a teenager, he wasn't the type to party or chase attention. He stayed away from crowds and didn't care about being popular. What mattered to him was discipline and purpose. After finishing high school, he went to college for a short time, but soon decided that wasn't the path for him. He wanted something harder, something that would test him. That's when he joined the U.S. Army. From the very beginning, he took it seriously. While other new soldiers joked around or looked for ways to avoid hard work, Jerry pushed himself harder and harder every day. He didn't complain. He didn't show off. He just worked, and it paid off. In time, he joined the Special Forces, also known as the Green Berets. These were no ordinary soldiers. Green Berets were trained for missions that most people couldn't imagine, often without backup. Becoming one meant passing some of the toughest physical and mental tests in the military. Jerry didn't just pass, he stood out. He learned how to survive in the jungle. He learned how to speak other languages. He trained in weapons, explosives, hand-to-hand combat, and more. By the mid-1960s, Jerry Shriver had made it to the front lines in one of the most dangerous wars in U.S. history, the Vietnam War. This wasn't a war with clear battle lines or easy victories. It was a dirty, confusing, and deadly conflict where soldiers had to fight not just the enemy, but also the jungle itself. The North Vietnamese army and their allies, the Viet Cong, were smart and ruthless. They didn't fight like regular armies. They used booby traps, sniper ambushes, and tunnel systems that stretched for miles underground. One moment everything would be quiet, and the next, bullets and explosions would come out of nowhere. It was a place where you could die without ever seeing your enemy. But for some reason, Jerry didn't seem bothered by any of this. In fact, some people thought he looked more alive in Vietnam than he did anywhere else. He was calm, alert, and totally locked in, while others panicked or alarmed.
Yeah, it's weird. But also, his whole character of being quiet and not. They are people that you. Well, that's what the saying is the quiet one you watch out for. But I've also. I'm sure it was even a Vietnam soldier that was saying, you see how people. How men in war. Some men, he's like, can't do it. And they die quick. They just can't kill like that. Um, he's like, but then there's some men that. Like, because you take someone's life, it's the nearest to a god you can feel. You take away someone's everything. He's like, there's some people that really like that sense of power of taking someone's life. And he's like, and then you have the other lot that are aware of that law to that power, but kind of discipline themselves down. But yeah, also it is always the person that is um not the one that's going with the pack and all that. That is that's the dangerous one.
Focus, Jerry stayed sharp. He moved through the thick jungle like he belonged there. He studied the land, watched the trees, and listened for the smallest sound. Danger didn't make him nervous, it made him stronger. And because of his unique mindset and skills, Jerry was chosen for something even more intense. MACVSOG, short for Military Assistance Command Vietnam, Studies and Observations Group. This was a top-secret unit. Most Americans had no idea it even existed. Only the best soldiers were picked for it. MACVSOG didn't do normal missions. They didn't guard bases or patrol cities. They were sent deep into enemy territory, often across borders into Laos and Cambodia, where the U.S. troops technically weren't even allowed to go. Their job was to find enemy bases, destroy supply lines, rescue prisoners, gather intelligence, and sometimes even capture enemy officers. Every mission was dangerous. Every step could be their last. These men went in with small teams, sometimes just 6 to 12 soldiers, and faced hundreds of enemy troops. There was no room for error. If they were caught, they couldn't count on help. Many never came back. But Jerry just kept signing up, again and again. He wasn't just good at this kind of warfare, he seemed built for it. He followed orders and led missions with a cold, almost machine-like focus. He learned to work closely with local fighters like the Montagnards, tribal people from Vietnam's Central Highlands. The Montagnards were brave, skilled warriors who hated the communists, but they didn't trust everyone. Many American soldiers treated them badly. Jerry was different. He treated them with respect and kindness. He learned some of their language. He shared food with them. He fought beside them. And because of that, they respected him deeply. But Jerry didn't lead from the back. He was always up front, the first one into danger. He never asked his men to do something he wouldn't do himself. One mission in late 1966 showed the world what Jerry Shriver was really made of. His team had been sent deep into Laos where the North Vietnamese had built hidden roads and supply trails, part of what's known as the Ho Chi Minh Trail. This mission was top secret. If they were caught, there would be no backup, no air support, and no chance of rescue. Now everything went wrong fast. The team was ambushed. The jungle exploded with bullets and grenades. The enemy had him surrounded on all sides. Most men in that situation would freeze. Some might try to hide. Others panic, but not Jerry. He ran straight into enemy fire, spraying bullets and throwing grenades with deadly accuracy. He didn't care that he was outnumbered. He didn't care that he might die. His goal was to buy time for the rest of his team to escape. And he did just that. Jerry dragged not one, but 2 wounded teammates out of the jungle while still under fire. He was even hit, bleeding and exhausted, but he didn't stop. Somehow he kept going. He got them out, got them to the extraction point, and made sure they all got on the helicopter. When they landed back at the...
You can't help but think, because you do hear stories of this, of men doing it. You have the one in Band of Brothers who did it. That's apparently a true story. Just run, and it's almost as if like it catches the enemy off guard. They're not expecting it. That Canadian, he took on a whole, liberated a whole town by himself by running around and appearing like there's more of them. But you can't help but think that there's a you've switched something in that head, that they just don't care anymore. Like it's like as if, and to do it to someone who is disciplined by nature. They said in his early life he was disciplined. It's just an insane, like as if there's something gone, but it's still insanely focused and driven, because yeah, that's a dangerous combination.
Everyone was shocked. Jerry was covered in dirt, blood, and sweat. He simply cleaned his rifle, reloaded his gear, and got ready for the next mission. That moment is when the nickname Mad Dog truly began to stick. Soldiers started whispering about him. Stories spread fast, especially in Special Forces circles. Some thought he was crazy. The enemy feared him. In 1966, he was given the Silver Star for bravery, but he didn't care about awards. He kept his uniform plain.
This is
He
always the
didn't
same
smile
thing.
in photos. He barely spoke. By 1967, the war in Vietnam was getting even more violent. American soldiers were dying every day. The jungles were full of traps. Enemy soldiers were everywhere. It was a nightmare. But for Jerry, it was just another day. He went on mission after mission, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. And each mission meant flying by helicopter deep into enemy territory. Once dropped in, the team had to move fast and stay hidden. If they were spotted, hundreds of enemy soldiers could be on them in minutes. His team would sneak in, plant explosives, destroy supply lines, or spy on enemy activity. Sometimes they were sent to capture high-ranking officers. Sometimes they went in to gather intelligence. By now, the North Vietnamese Army and the Viet Cong had started to notice something strange. Reports kept coming in about this one American who kept surviving impossible missions. The one man who always seemed to escape, even when surrounded. It became something of a ghost story among enemy soldiers. They started calling him the White Ghost, or Ghost of the Jungle. Some enemy troops believed he wasn't even real. Others believed he was some kind of evil spirit. Rumors said he could walk through bullets.
Arguably, that mythology around him is arguably just as valuable, if not more valuable, than his actual incredible military ability. The fact that you've become a kind of a myth, a urban legend to people and to soldiers, that when they hear something in the night, they think is Mad Dog.
Never slept. That he killed with his bare hands. The North Vietnamese were so afraid of him that they put a bounty on his head. Some reports say the reward was tens of thousands of dollars. But even with the bounty, no one could catch him. In November 1967, Jerry took part in one of the most dangerous and heroic missions of his career. U.S. intelligence had discovered a prison camp in Laos where American prisoners of war were being held. These were soldiers who had been captured, beaten, and locked in bamboo cages. Now, most people believed the camp was too heavily guarded to attack. It was surrounded by jungle and protected by hundreds of North Vietnamese troops. So the plan was simple but incredibly dangerous. His team would fly in by helicopter, land nearby, sneak through the jungle, attack the camp, rescue the prisoners, and get out fast. Just like that, all in one night. There would be no backup, again. And if anything went wrong, they were on their own. Jerry led the team himself. They reached the prison camp without being spotted. Then, without warning, they attacked. Dozens of guards were killed within minutes. Jerry moved quickly, breaking open the cages with his own hands. He helped pull the POWs out who were weak, starving, and barely alive. The team fought their way out, carrying the rescued soldiers on their backs. In the middle of the fight, Jerry was shot in the leg, but he kept moving. He refused to stop until every single man was out of that camp. By the time the helicopters lifted off, every POW had been rescued, and not a single man on Jerry's team had been lost. It was a perfect mission, almost unheard of in a war like this. Jerry was awarded another Silver Star for that rescue, but more importantly, he had brought American soldiers home, and that meant everything to him. That mission made Jerry even more of a legend, but the war was far from over. In 1968, the war in Vietnam changed. On January 30th, during the Tet holiday, North Vietnamese and Viet Cong forces launched a huge surprise attack. It was called the Tet Offensive. Cities all over South Vietnam were attacked at the same time. Places like Hue, Saigon, and Da Nang. More than 80,000 enemy troops were involved. It shocked the world. American bases were hit hard. Soldiers were caught off guard. Battles were fought in the streets, in houses, and in government buildings. Thousands of people
That's
died,
crazy.
both soldiers and civilians. In some areas, U.S. forces had to fight for weeks just to take back control. It became one of the most deadly periods in the war. Back in the U.S., people watching on TV were horrified. They had been told that America was winning the war, but now it looked like the enemy was much stronger than expected. Trust in the government and the war effort dropped fast. Many Americans wanted the war to end.
Yeah.
But Jerry didn't care about politics. He wasn't thinking about Washington or news reports or speeches. He cared about one thing: the mission. By early 1969, the war...
Yeah, that's another thing you see with soldiers as well. I even saw a comment, but soldiers, when you're out there in that world and you're not coming back, I mean that's even in Apocalypse Now, isn't it? But when you're not coming back to, it's when soldiers come back to civilization and they realize the craziness they're doing. But when you're there, over there, you're kind of, and it sounds like that's just what this guy is. But then I also heard like a soldier say his dad was a policeman. He's like, when you're a soldier, it is easier to compartmentalize horrendous things you saw or did in war because you come back and you're not there. But he said as his dad was a policeman and he went a traffic cop and went to somewhere where a whole family had been decapitated and his dad had to walk around looking for like a 4-year-old girl's little head. He's like, and his dad never ever recovered from that. He's like, because there's no you just go from that to back into, that's just happened in the regular world, right? But what this guy sounds like, that he's just completely in, like immersed in the whole ideology of war and fighting, and yeah.
Dragged on for years. The U.S. was tired, but Jerry was still out there. That's when new intelligence came in. A major North Vietnamese base had been found, not in Vietnam, but across the border in Cambodia, close to South Vietnam. It was being used to plan attacks and move troops. If that base could be destroyed, it would deal a serious blow to the enemy. But there was a big problem. The base was deep inside enemy territory. Going there would mean sneaking past hundreds of enemy troops with no support. It was a high-risk mission, and Jerry volunteered to lead it. He handpicked his team, a total of 12 men. A few American Special Forces soldiers, and the rest, Montagnard fighters, who'd been with Jerry many times before. They trusted him with their lives. On April 24, 1969, Jerry Shriver and his team boarded helicopters at a base in South Vietnam. Their mission was to fly into Cambodia, deep into enemy-held jungle, and locate a large North Vietnamese command base, then call in airstrikes to wipe it out. They landed in the dense jungle far from any support. The team moved carefully through the brush, trying to stay hidden. Every step had to be quiet. They couldn't risk being seen. But shortly after landing, the mission started to fall apart. Somehow, the enemy had spotted them, maybe from the air, maybe by patrol. And within minutes, gunfire exploded from the trees. The team had no time to prepare. Bullets came from all sides. Radio reports later suggested there were several hundred North Vietnamese soldiers in the area. The small American-led team was completely surrounded. They took cover behind logs and roots, returning fire as best they could. Jerry was seen moving quickly through the chaos, checking on each man, shouting commands, and pulling the wounded to safety. He refused to hide, but the situation kept getting worse. At some point during the battle, radio contact with Jerry's team was lost. No one knows exactly when it happened. With no signal and no updates, the command realized something had gone terribly wrong. Air support was called in, U.S. bombers dropped napalm and heavy ordnance across the area where the team had last been seen. The goal was to break the enemy line and give Jerry's team a chance to escape or regroup. Thick smoke and fire covered the jungle. But still, there was no reply from Jerry. Search and rescue teams were sent in as soon as the bombing stopped. They searched the entire region. They looked for any trace of life, any broken equipment, blood, spent shell casings, clothing, or anything that would prove the team had survived or died. But they found absolutely nothing. It was as if the team had vanished without a trace. The Army listed Jerry as missing in action. No one knew for sure what had happened. Some believed he'd been killed in the firefight. Others believed he might have been captured and taken across the border. Over the years, strange rumors started to spread. Some American prisoners of war who later escaped or were released claimed they had seen a pale American held in secret camps in Laos or Cambodia. Some said he had long hair and a beard. Others said he looked like he'd been in chains for years. No one knew for sure. Nothing was ever confirmed. But the stories kept coming. In 1974, 5 years after the mission, the U.S. military officially declared Jerry Michael Shriver dead. But they never found his body. And to this day, his remains have never been recovered. Some people still believe he was captured and died in a secret camp. Others think he was killed in that final firefight and buried deep in the jungle. Whatever the truth is, it remains a mystery, one of the most haunting in the Vietnam War. During his time in Vietnam, Jerry completed over 100 combat missions. He earned 3 Silver Stars, a Bronze Star with V device, and a Purple Heart. But medals weren't his legacy. He kept going while others couldn't. He never wrote books. He never gave interviews. He didn't come home. But among the toughest fighters of Vietnam, his name still means something.
That's crazy. Imagine the stories that man would have had he survived. And I wonder what did happen. I mean, you could have just blown everything to bits too. If you dropped loads of bombs in there, you could have just blown him into Kingdom Come. But then, I don't know, because he didn't really say whether they found any of his group either. I thought it was going to be that he was, like, what's his name in Apocalypse? That's where I thought this might be going, to what the real story of Apocalypse Now was. Because that's what he is, isn't it? What's his name? Marlon Brando in it. But yeah, and because as well, he's in that is secret, like this guy was doing secret missions, and that comes up in the Apocalypse Now, going into Cambodia and places they aren't meant to be. Yeah, but that's crazy. That's crazy. I bet they really didn't want to. I mean, you say it's crazy, but it, how many lives can you have when you're in like that kind of situation, that volatile of area? Like they said, it can just come out of nowhere, they just spring out the ground and full blown attack you. To do 100 missions and then get, it's, I mean, that's insane, insane. But I wonder what did happen. I mean, the best you could hope for is that he got a soldier's death and died in a gunfight, or however, rather than wasting away chained up. And although for the if he was like a feared mythological creature at that point, basically, to have him on display would be very morale boosting for the people that believed in his legend. But yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. And imagine the stories that man would have had. He would have been built for podcasts. He'd just have 100 missions. Think of that. Yeah, insane. Yeah, that's crazy. He might even still be over there. He might have, like I say, it might be like a Marlon Brando thing in that film. But then the fact that they wouldn't find him. And I don't know how the Americans and the Vietnamese left things. Whether they left things on good negotiable terms where they could ask, but I imagine loads of people was buried just in random places of Vietnam where no one knows where they are. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the reaction. Sweet.